Hey, so Rich Tyson coming at you Saturday afternoon here in Rochester. It's thankfully sunny outside today. Wanted to get you some updates as I've been trying to do weekly now with what's going on the housing provider, eviction moratorium, tenant protection act front here in New York, and specifically how it's kind of impacting Rochester, New York, where I'm located. So I'll throw this up on the screen. I want to tackle the Under One Roof updates first. So Under One Roof is a group that I have been kind of teamed up with, along with some other individual efforts that I've been pursuing in trying to bring some sanity and accountability back to the situation. So the survey results are in. I think I mentioned last week in the video that that the survey had been done, but the results are in. They've been digested, compiled, and getting ready for presentation, which takes me on to point two, is that those lawmaker meetings are underway with Under One Roof. So that's fantastic. The survey results have been provided, and that data has been. So really starting to create that, I think, healthy foundation for a dialogue with the legislatures going forward. With that said, those lawmaker meetings are not the ones that we are going to be hosting, which is the housing providers getting to share some testimonials with what they've experienced. So if you're still interested in doing that, reach out to me and let me know, and we will get you plugged in. Again, there's kind of a limited number of seats that we can have, with respect to people's time, but would be happy to have you involved if you are, willing and able to speak to kind of what you've been experiencing, how it's impacting your business, what it's doing to your own housing inventory. And lastly, lobbying for the $1.3 billion in rent relief to landlords. So the number $1.3 billion has been tossed around, as I understand it. It sounds like that's what they're hoping to allocate towards providing some relief. And so now we are, advocating for that, obviously, to be provided to landlords. Now, with me specifically, what I'm advocating for and what I'm hoping for is I'd like to see that aid be distributed direct to landlords. In my experience, as I've mentioned many times before, the folks that I have that have not paid rent were not due to COVID, or at least not the ones that I'm pursuing evictions on. I do have people that were impacted financially due to COVID. I'm trying to keep those people in their house. I am not starting eviction proceedings against them. This may, shock some people, but as a housing provider, I actually like having tenants in my units. I don't want to evict people. It's actually the last thing that most housing providers want to do. We'd like long-term, good tenants, people that take care of the property, but we need people that pay rent. So, if they've been impacted financially, we understand it. We're willing to work with them. And if they have been impacted financially, it would suggest that they should be eligible for relief. So, and the other thing is that I've experienced is, thankfully, some of the folks that were abusing the situation have opted to self-vacate and have moved out and moved along. So we need a mechanism in here that's going to provide relief directly to the landlords and not count on, either tenants that are not eligible or tenants who were not eligible and have since vacated the premise and have moved on to greener pastures, probably with the money that they saved by not paying rent for 10 months. So the mechanism I'm advocating for, because I think we want to keep this very simple. It doesn't need to be a convoluted, complicated process. Much like the PPP loans were administered, show a tax return year over year, show the losses, and let's create that as the talking point for how we're going to get this relief, quantified and then distributed. And I'd like to see that happen. Whether that will be the process, we don't know. It's certainly what I'm advocating for. That's not speaking for anyone else other than myself. It's just, in the chorus of voices that are trying to figure out how this should all work. That's what I'm personally advocating for, and I do feel that there are some other folks out there that agree with that. In looking at my notes here, yes, Rochester City Court has apparently, they are opening up the process again for evictions. Now, with that said, if a tenant fills out a, hardship declaration, it's going to automatically adjourn until after May 1st. So, much like I have had an issue with the process all along between what was initially the ability to start evictions, then it was adjourned for 2 months. Now a bunch of these are getting adjourned indefinitely. Is if we're going to have a hardship declaration, there's got to be some proof behind it, because just simply saying, yes, I've had a hardship, is, it's not allowing us access to the courts, who at this point, unless they could come up with a different, path or a different mechanism, are the only way that we can, justify what's going on, and if people are in fact experiencing hardship. And like I've said, and I'm sure many housing providers would agree, if somebody wants to show up to court and say, hey, look, I've had a financial hardship, then great, then you should be eligible for some relief, and we will work hand in hand with you happily to get that relief to you. If you show up to court and you're not experiencing a hardship, then you're not going to be qualified for the relief, and you're now one of the abusers of the moratorium, and those people should be dealt with swiftly, because they are screwing this up for good housing providers, and more importantly, they're screwing up for good tenants, because at some point, these losses are going to have to be recouped, and there's only really one way to do that, and that's raising rents. So unless we want to see rents raised on good tenants across the board, we've got to find a way to basically pull the abusers out of the situation and deal with them accordingly. Otherwise, it's going to hurt everyone, and that's not being discussed. So I'm happy to see that the courts are opened up again. I'd like to see them have some sort of a mechanism in there to justify that these people that are claiming hardship have in fact experienced it, and if not, out you go. So that's the update for this week. I don't think, looking at my notes, that there's anything else. Again, if you want to be part of one of those, the panels for the housing providers direct to the legislators, reach out to me, let me know. I'd be happy to get you plugged in if we've got room, depending on the region. And I'll catch you guys soon. Enjoy the weekend out there. See ya.